Hi there, welcome to ZCash Wyckoff Technical Analysis session. ZCash has gone through an astonishing 30x pump. Is it completely over, however? So let's quickly take a look at the charts and see what it's telling us. If you're new to my sessions, here are the 3 key takeaways you can expect. Let's start with the weekly chart of ZCash. I know it's pretty or overly colorful, to be honest, because the price range of ZCash is really crazy. You know, from the lowest point of below $20, we're talking about summer last year, all the way to where it is now or in the past few days. So having said that, let's put in the Wyckoff tags, because this is the very first time I cover this, so the tags are not in place yet. This, what we have seen, was the buying climax. We had the preliminary supply period, and we have yet seen the second test, automatic reaction, and potentially a last point of supply. What's important here is that if we look to the left in the history, I'm going to close the drawing so it's easier. This distribution cycle was much lower. It went to around 360. Well, it lasted longer, not as crazy as this time, but then after these few weeks of climb, all right, the next 2 weeks it immediately fell back to somewhere near it started. Okay, it's got a few more peaks, but still lower than the buying climax. However, this is not the full picture. If we look further left to the 2018 cycle, the peak ended somewhere very close to where the price went to this time. Okay, if I shrink it further, you see the price went to somewhere near 750, the highest for this cycle. That time, the highest close was 754 roughly. You see that white candlestick over there. That was the close, around 755, 56. Okay, what's important here is that once it reached the peak, the next day it tried higher, but like what I said, for the subsequent weeks, similar to what happened over there, it went straight back to where it started. Look at this long wick over here, just the week after the peak. You see what happened over here. People bought the dip, and just to get caught, back to 300, and then an LPSY happened, and then a lower and lower and lower level. So be really careful if you have gone in, if you have FOMO in during this 30x run. ZCash did not stay very long for both rounds of mega distribution, one in 2018, one in 2021. While we're still in the week of this leg, be mindful that this selling from the top, from that 750, if people are getting out, if somebody is really holding that long for 7 years, over 7 years, they bought at that price, and then now they are finally, getting to a break even and selling. If we look at the wick over there, that was the very first. It reached over 750, sold back to this point, but some buyback from the bottom, from the dip. So that was a crazy week. The bulls and the bears were fighting hard. The next week was a little bit more mild. Just checking if I miss the volume chart. Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, that was actually higher than this, the trading volume. Subsequent weeks, not even this week of crazy price range. Only till then, over here, 4 weeks later, it got to a point where it's got similar trading volume. So we are seeing something like this now, a long wick from above. Okay, going back to the chart here, this selling, while this may not be the end, be very careful what comes next 2 weeks. If you once again see similar pattern like here, very crazy selling from the top, and then a subsequent week of getting even higher, not that it's, because we are actually at that level already, so we may not have this second leg up. Assuming we have, okay, that's the first we are having. Assuming in 2 weeks time there is a second, and it's going to get to same or like a little bit higher, around 800, be prepared that the drop that follows may be very fierce. So in terms of Wyckoff terminology, now it's time to bring back the drawings. That's what the automatic reaction is. That automatic reaction for ZCash was very, very deep. So if I bring these tags to the left hand side, skipping the smaller peak just to focus on this cycle, because that's the one comparable to what we are having now. That's the buying climax, right? We've got the PSY period, and the automatic reaction went so deep to just half the price or even lower than half the price of the peak, before it's got not even a second test, but the last point of supply. Alright? And then subsequent last point of supplies before it got to the selling climax and start the accumulation into the next distribution. Just pulling these tags back out. That's very difficult. Let's enlarge this. Let's save them from the ocean of rainbows, because I just copied them from another chart, trying to show you how to put them in to the current cycle we're going through. So there's one more test tag. No luck with that. Density. Okay. Now we get to where we are. Okay, not here, but here. So during this very long period from 2022 all the way to October 2024, there was a very mini, I'm very tempted, it's very tempting not to say it's a distribution, but it looks like it's a mini one before the actual one we're going through. So if that's the selling climax right on the left hand side back in June 2022, okay, well, to make things easier for the future, when it comes down, I'm going to copy one set just to put them to the very bottom of the chart so we can reuse them once ZCash comes down. Okay, let's park them there. That's the selling climax. Automatic rally. This is likely the case. Spring. Tests. More tests. And also, obviously, no, not two, just one. The sign of strength. That goes to here. Okay, very straightforward, simple way to put this. not to overcomplicate what has happened. So what we're going through, we already know. What's going to come next is this one, automatic reaction from the climax, which can be very fierce. Like I said, last time it went so deep back into the long-term playground zone, this white box. Alright, the white box is, I have to adjust this later because I've just put this very quickly together to prepare for this session. This box is supposed to track, since early days to now, 80%, 70-80% of the time, ZCash has been trading within this box. So this top has to come way lower. Okay, it's probably somewhere like this. We're currently way above this norm. And you know, when things are outside of the norm, they tend to have the thing, you can call that inertia. They tend to move back to where the norm is. Okay? Unless ZCash suddenly have some big improvements or big attractive, you know, features that drive crazy adoption. Or otherwise it's because of people that need privacy of moving their money around. They have taken their profit either through Bitcoin or altcoins, and they're moving it somewhere else, and they are moving it through ZCash. Okay, one more tag at the bottom, two more. The second test, let's drag them here, and also the selling climax, put them right there. Okay, so daily chart again, more challenging, but let's deal with the thing here first. So if that's the buying climax that happened 2 days ago, we may or may not have seen the automatic reaction. This may not be the real automatic reaction. Alright, so be careful. We have the second test, last point of supply, the PSY period. We've gone through the preliminary supply period. So these four tags, let's move them down to near where the selling climax and the second test was. Very crazy price range. So then these may be multiple cycles instead of, it looks to me they are multiple cycles instead of just like the bigger picture in the weekly time frame. So that's why, as always said, Wyckoff is not designed for this, but for the bigger time frame. You can imagine like 100 years ago, they don't have trading view. So they probably won't be looking at the charts with such a frequency, or at such a frequency as we have. Okay, if this is a distribution, this is the accumulation, and that means just quickly, selling climax, automatic rally over there, that's the reaction. Preliminary support goes here. There was a second test. Do we have tests? No, because that's where another test was. And sign of strength. I think the box has color, so that's why we are not seeing the text and the rainbow so clearly. And the backup last point of support right there. Another sign of strength. Okay, you can call that a spring as well, or just another test right over there. And with the selling climax, opposite, obviously we've got the buying climax. And there was second test as well, right there. And obviously LPSY. Okay, this is the LPSY period. Just checking quickly. That leg up. That's the, because this can be 2 mini distribution cycles as well in the daily time frame. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We've got enough over here. So we are now, or this cycle has gone to this point, assuming that's the PSY. And we are just arriving the climax, pending the automatic reaction to happen, which may be very deep, remember. Then potentially there would be a second test. It happened in 2024. Okay, so it climbed to this peak. That was probably the buying climax, and then an upthrust, and then subsequently we've got these mini peaks. Okay, so there was indeed a subsequent test which reached a higher level, but that was only around $300. Compared to this one, at this level, there was no second test. Only a rebound from the automatic reaction that went so deep, somewhere near the top of the long-term playground zone, bounced for about $150, okay, and then eventually returned to the box, to the long-term playground zone. So, crazy move for ZCash. Hopefully, it's not going to fall as fierce as, in 7 years ago. Thanks for joining me. Trade safe. Remember,